How does James Gunn do it, man? How does he make you care about these weirdos and broken people? How does he find and bring out their humanity and make you see yourself in them? Someone please answer my questions. What's up, guys? My name is Ryan. Welcome to my channel if you are new here. So the next entry on our MCU Rewatch and Review series is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and I was so excited to go back and rewatch this one. Wasn't quite an 11 out of 10, but it definitely is a really good entry in the MCU, and we'll talk about that. And it is actually after I watched the movie, so let's just jump into it. Also, spoilers if you have not seen the film. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is a very interesting MCU film because the final act of this film, the third act, is so stinking good, so emotional, so powerful. The ending of this film is so good, and with a film that's, the ending is what you leave the movie thinking about, that's what's in your mind come the end of the film, and the ending's so good that you come away from the film on this emotional high, but when I came down from it, I was like, the first two acts, while not bad, they are good, are just not on the same level as that final act, and I do have some issues with this film. I felt like overall the story just could have used a bit more work. Like I said, the first two acts are just like not on the same level or as of the same quality, and they don't have the same like punch to them as the third act. I felt like the build up to that third act just wasn't as strong as it could have been. While there are some interesting things happening and there's some great character moments just scattered all throughout this film, including in those first two acts, there's just not a lot of forward momentum and enough oomph in those first two acts, I think. And a big part of that is because we really don't know what the main plot is of the film until that third act, I don't think, because we don't know who really our main villain is. Or maybe I guess you could argue until like maybe halfway through the film, because that's when Mantis starts to, wanting to tell the Guardians that Ego's not a great guy. You can kind of tell where it's going. But I just felt like if they could have given us more of an idea of what the plot of the film actually is, like there's multiple things happening, but we're not exactly sure what the main plot is. And some emotional moments like throughout this film, I feel like they don't have as much impact, and they're not hollow, they're definitely not hollow, but some don't have as much impact as they should have, because I just feel like the buildup was a bit lacking, because the story just isn't as strong in the first two acts. And another part of that is with the jokes. And I would say like maybe half the jokes in this film actually really didn't work for me, and they were just kind of like the really rude and irreverent type of James Gunn humor. A decent amount of humor in this film is regarding like bodily functions. It's kind of sexual, and that's just not my type of humor. I do not like that type of humor. So there's a lot of jokes in this film that just kind of take me out of the film and that are supposed to like be funny, but I'm just not laughing. Now this film does definitely have a lot of funny jokes, but some of them were just really not my humor. And I felt like with some of the jokes, like they were trying to have these really meaningful moments, and they're trying to immerse you and get you to feel this emotion, but they insert a joke, and it's like a joke that's not my type of humor, and it's like really irreverent, and it just kind of cuts the legs off the emotion they were trying to build up, so it doesn't have as much impact. I know a lot of people, this is like a top 10 MCU film for a lot of people out there, and I'm glad it is if that's your opinion, and we'll have to wait to see where I land on it when I do my MCU ranking at the end of this project. But just off the top of my head, I think it'll be more so in the middle portion of my ranking because of the issues that I just talked about. But this film does also have a lot that I really do love, and first and foremost, once again, another fantastic soundtrack. I love the music in this film. I'm a big music guy. All I ever want to do and talk about is movies, music, and God and the Bible. That's it. That's all I want to talk about. Well, and family and friends too, of course. James Gunn once again put together a fantastic soundtrack. I love Brandy, You're a Fine Girl, Mr. Blue Sky. The Chain probably being my favorite. Both uses of The Chain in this film by Fleetwood Mac, I believe. Really good usage of that song, I think. Wham Bam Shang-a-Lang, father and son at the end, when Yondu dies, rip Yondu. Oh gosh, so emotional. I did not expect to care for Yondu so much come the end of this film. And then you also got Southern Nights. I love that moment in the forest where Rocket's like playing Southern Nights and he's like humming to it, and you can kind of tell he's like getting into Peter's music, and I love that. And he's setting these traps, like these I believe it's like an anti-gravity bomb or something, when the Ravagers all come to get him, and he's like setting off these bombs and shooting them into the air and all that, and Southern Nights is playing in the background. I just thought that was amazing. And once again, great to have the Guardians back. Great cast, just great characters. And I love the new characters we get in this film. I like Kurt Russell as our villain Ego here. One thing about Ego real quick, some of the information we get about like his origin and like how his life force works and everything, in light of the film Eternals, which we'll get to eventually, I don't think it makes sense, because in that film they talk about celestials, you know, these godlike beings and their origins and how they work and how their life is sustained and how they grow and how the life cycle of a celestial works. But with Ego's origin and how he explains it, it's just doesn't really make sense in light of what we learn in Eternals, because Ego is a celestial. Maybe I'm remembering Eternals wrong. I'd have to go back and rewatch it. I will watch and review it eventually when we get there. I haven't seen the film since theaters, really, so I may be remembering wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm not. But it just, a little bit of a moment of that doesn't make too much sense there in light of what you've revealed later, but it's a small thing, that's fine. But I also love Palm Clementieff, hopefully I'm saying her name right, as Mantis. I like how she joins the Guardians at the end of the film, and she's in the rest of the MCU with the Guardians whenever they appear. And I love there's some actors who get kind of cameos in this film, like Sylvester Stallone is like, I guess, the leader of all the Ravager groups. And then we also get to see Ving Rhames as another Ravager group leader, and then we also get to see, you can't tell it's Michael Rosenbaum because of CGI, but we get Michael Rosenbaum, one of my favorite actors in this film. He has a very small role, but I just love seeing him because I love him as Lex in my favorite show, Smallville. Probably my favorite villain, Michael Rosenbaum's Lex Luthor, so I just love seeing him here. And especially because it's a Marvel project and he's most known for that, his big DC role. But what makes this movie for me is there's so many great character moments throughout this film, and is so emotional, so powerful, especially in that third act like I talked about earlier. James Gunn, like I said in the intro, just has such a stinking gift for taking these weirdos and broken people like a raccoon and a talking tree and making them relatable and making you care and finding the humanity in them. I love the moments with Yondu and Rocket, how you come to find out that they are really kind of similar. I love that moment when Yondu's saying to Rocket that he knows exactly who he is and he knows everything about him. I love when Yondu says, "You can fool yourself and everyone else, but you can't fool me. I know who you are. I know everything about you. I know you play like you're the meanest and the hardest, but actually, you're the most scared of all. I know you steal batteries you don't need, and you push away anyone who's willing to put up with you, because just a little bit of love reminds you how big and empty that hole inside you actually is." And that whole time Yondu's talking and saying these things, Rocket's just like, shut up, shut up. And it just reminds me of how the truth can really hurt sometimes, and when someone knows us so well and could just see right through us, it's kind of scary. I just love moments like that where the truth hurts is communicated, and it's not easy to hear the truth and be convicted like how God convicts us through his word and with his Holy Spirit, or through his Holy Spirit. But when God does it, it's because he loves us and he's trying to show us where we need to change and where we need to be more surrendered to Christ and be more conformed to his image, and we need to seek his help in areas in our lives where we struggle with certain sins maybe and need to seek his help. That's just what that scene reminded me of. It's just a fantastic, emotional, powerful scene. And then I love the relationship with Gamora and Nebula and kind of diving into their relationship and growing up. And I love when they have that fight when Nebula arrives on Ego's planet, and then Nebula's like ship starts to blow up, and then like she's about to like fall into this like chasm, and then Gamora saves her, and then they have this fight, and at the end of it, Nebula's like, "I just wanted a sister." And I love how Gamora talks to Nebula at the end and gives her a hug and offers her a place with the Guardians. But the most emotional of all, the stuff with Star-Lord and finding out who his dad is, and the stuff with Yondu and realizing how he was a much better father than his actual father, when we come to find out that Ego, Star-Lord's biological father, is a terrible person. And just, oh my gosh, that scene where it's revealed and like he's talking to Peter, telling him that he needs to follow in his footsteps and kind of like take over the galaxy and spread his essence, and that's kind of the purpose of life. And then he's talking about, and Star-Lord's like, "What about my mother?" And he's like, talking about her and how he loved her, and it really hurt to put that tumor in her head. And then I remember watching that moment for the first time I saw this film, I was just like, I was such a punch to the gut. You felt what Star-Lord felt in that moment. James Gunn, masterfully done, sir. And then Star-Lord just repeatedly shoots his father, and in the moment it's like, yes, 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 shoot that jerk, shoot him, shoot him, shoot him. And then they realize they have to kill Ego to stop him from spreading his essence all over the galaxy and taking over. And then I thought it was interesting how they made Ego in the comics there's a character named Ego the Living Planet, and he is not Star-Lord's father in the comics. His father is a guy named Jason, I think. But I find that interesting how they made Ego the Living Planet his father. It's such an interesting fight scene how he's this living planet and he can like control the entire planet, and they're trying to get to his core and to like his heart or his brain and like kill him and blow him up. And I love that moment when like he's kind of engulfing Peter's family and friends and rocks, and then he's trying to use Peter's life force to help get enough power to spread his essence throughout the galaxy. And I love that moment when Ego tells Peter, what greater meaning can life possibly have to offer? And then Peter starts to think about how he's found this family and love with the Guardians and being raised by Yondu, and realizing how he was a much better father than Ego ever will be. And it reminds me of some scripture about what life's all about. I want to look at Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 13 real quick. Verse 13 says, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is man's all. Man's purpose and the meaning of life is to glorify God and to know him. And then Jesus, in multiple gospel accounts, they talk about the story of how someone asked Jesus, what is the greatest commandment? And Jesus says to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And that is the meaning and purpose of life. That is why we are here on this earth, to know God and to love other people and help other people come to know God and have a relationship with him and serve him. That's the Great Commission. When Jesus tells us in Matthew 28, 19 through 20, go and make disciples of all nations. God created us for relationship with him and to glorify and honor him and to love each other and help each other know God and grow in our relationships with him and become more like him. It sounds cliche, but life is all about love. That's the reason why we do things, why we go out and maybe work jobs we don't necessarily like, to provide for those we care about. Love is kind of what makes the world go round. It's why we do what we do a lot of the time. In that moment where Ego is asking Peter, what greater meaning can life have than, taking over the world or the universe? And then Peter starts to think about the family and love he's found with the Guardians and his being raised by Yondu, and he remembers and sees that the greater meaning that life has to offer is to love people. And that's what the Guardians do. They love each other. They're this found family. They're the Guardians of the Galaxy. They help people. They keep them safe so they can go home to their families. I thought that was just fantastic how they kind of communicated that a little bit in that scene. And then, of course, one last thing I have to talk about. Oh, the death of Yondu. Oh my gosh. Once again, just how does James Gunn do it, man? When Yondu sacrifices himself to save Peter, and Peter realizes that, Yondu always kind of joked, I guess, about, not eating Peter and how he only picked him up and kept him and didn't deliver him to Ego so he could use him for thieving because he was smaller and skinnier, could fit into places. But that's not really why, because Yondu came to care for Peter and they developed this father-son relationship, and Yondu is not a great father, but he's much better than Ego was. Like we talked about earlier when he's talking to Rocket, he gives off the impression that he doesn't care and he acts all tough and mean, but really he does care about Peter. And I love when he says that he's proud to call him his boy, and when he's talking to Peter about Ego and how he says, he may have been your father, boy, but he wasn't your daddy. And that quote reminds me of how there's so many people in this world, I feel, that have like absentee fathers or abusive fathers, and they have fathers who just don't act like fathers. They may be fathers by blood, but they don't act like it. They may be fathers, but they're not daddies. They don't care about their kids. They don't comfort them and love them and disciple them and shepherd them down the right path. And like I said, Yondu isn't a great father, but he's better than Ego. He could have shown his love for Peter and made that more clear, not joke with him all the time about how he could still eat him, like if he misbehaves or doesn't do what he wants him to do. But I just love kind of how Peter is the person who we're seeing the film through his eyes, and he just realizes how much Yondu means to him and how he was a better father than Ego. And I love when at Yondu's funeral, how all the Ravagers come, and Peter says, sometimes the thing you were searching for your whole life was right there beside you all along, and you don't even know it. This film just filled with so many great messages about family and love, and that's why I love the Guardians films. They're this stories about redemption, family, finding family, and community, and they got great music. I think there's just so many great, wonderful messages to pull out of the Guardians films. Once again, another really solid entry in the MCU. And I think that's all I have to say about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I think I'd give it a 7 out of 10. I want to give it higher because I love the third act so much, but like I said, I have issues with those first 2 acts. They're just not as quality or as strong as that final act. Once again, some of the jokes just not my type of thing, but I really do love so much about this film. But thank y'all for watching this review, guys. I really love and appreciate y'all's support. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and let me know down below what you think of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Would love to have a conversation with y'all about this movie. But click right over here to subscribe if you enjoy my content. Would so love and appreciate your support in helping put more God-honoring Christian content out there into the world. Right here is my last MCU review for Doctor Strange. Here's a playlist of all my MCU videos if you want to watch some more of my MCU content. And with that, I hope y'all have a great one, guys. I'll see y'all in the next video.